And guys, welcome back to Beyond the Arc, and first of all, massive apology for, I guess, the lack of content there's been here over the last God knows how long. I think just a mixture of uni work and the fact that like the World Cup's on. It just, the NBA and basketball has kind of been pushed to the wayside. It also didn't help that my Chicago Bulls literally went through like one of the worst, most depressing runs of play that I think I've ever seen. Like, we plummeted, but then we won 2 in a row. But I'll talk about that a little bit later. But essentially, there will be some more, hopefully, basketball content coming out soon. A few more things are in the works. Again, just me today. And we're about a quarter of the way through the NBA season. It doesn't feel like that. It feels like the NBA literally started yesterday. And to be fair, we're only about like a month or so in, but every team has played around about 18 to 20 games. So we're getting a bit of a feel of what's going to be going on in the NBA this year. A few teams that started really well, starting to kind of like slide down. Sides that started slowly are starting to pick things up. There's obviously the teams that have absolutely been smashing it from the get-go, as well as the sides that have been committing to the tank. And I think that's probably what we're going to be talking about today, in the way that the NBA draft for 2023 is absolutely screwing everything up in terms of like what teams are planning on doing. Some teams are committing to the tank. Some teams are seeing people tanking and then thinking, you know what, this is our chance to maybe take it to that next level and get a bit of a surprise run in the playoffs, like the Sacramento Kings. I'm all for that, by the way. Big up the Kings making the playoffs. I don't think it's happened since... Well, I don't think it's happened... When's the last time the Kings made the playoffs? Yeah, the 05-06 season, when I would have been, what, like 2 years old? So I'm all for it. De'Aaron Fox might actually finally make an all-star team, except maybe not, because whilst he is actually in a playoff team now, we got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander doing what De'Aaron Fox has been doing for like the last 3-4 seasons of his career, but at such a better level that he's probably going to make an all-star team. He probably should start, but we'll talk about the OKC a little bit later. But yeah, this is essentially going to be me rambling on about NBA stuff. Hopefully I can make this like a daily thing, talking about the NBA, like just uncut, or I might edit it a little bit, but as uncut as possible, who knows. But this is essentially just going to be me rambling on about the NBA. There weren't any games last night as of recording, because of Thanksgiving, so why not take this time to kind of just like review everything that's happened in the first quarter of the season. Not everything, but I got a few teams that I want to talk about, some teams that are in a little bit of a pickle, and the first team is probably the Miami Heat, because every single time I say that Miami aren't going to do well in predictions, or I say that they're going to finish just above the playing area, they absolutely smash it. They finish first in the conference. I don't get how they do it. And then the one time I back them, and they're what, 12th? They're 12th in the East with a 8-11 record, which is quite bad. Like, they only lost, I think it was about 28 games last season, so they're almost halfway through that, and we're not even 20 games into the season. It's a bit of an issue, I think. I think this is quite telling. They didn't replace PJ Tucker in the off season, and it's kind of showing. Jimmy Butler's aging as well. He's not being able to carry him as much. I mean, he is being injured a lot recently. He is like 33, so that's obviously going to come. But the players that you think are going to be stepping up, your Tyler Heroes and your Bam Adebayos, whilst they're not having awful seasons, like I think Bam's still averaging 19 and 9, and Tyler Hero's still averaging close to 20 points a game. They're not players that can step up and drop you 30 and average close to 30. Like, these are solid second and third options, but you need that star if you want to progress, especially given how competitive the East has been so far this season. They have had awful injury problems. I mean, the other week they played Washington, had 7 players and took it to overtime. I mean, Kyle Lowry played 50 minutes. 10 minutes off of an hour on a basketball court for little old Kyle Lowry. I mean, I pray for him. I'm surprised he managed to do it. There's many players in the NBA who won't be able to do that. But yeah, when you don't have many players to choose from, it's going to affect you when you get injuries. So the Heat have a thin roster and in some places an old roster. I mean, I think they only have like 11, 12 people on the roster, and one of them is Udonis Haslem, and that guy hasn't played in like 4 years. He's been paid just to sit on the bench and be a coach, essentially, almost. So, are the Heat not going to do bits this year? Probably. And ironically, it's the one time I actually predicted them to do somewhat decent this year. Does this Miami Heat team commit to a tank? Is that what we're thinking? Maybe I don't know. I don't think there's ever been a point in my life where the Miami Heat have been tanking. Like whenever, like the Miami Heat are one of those teams where they've always been good at cultivating like a winning culture. And I can't even think about a Miami team that didn't make the playoffs. There's probably one in like the last 5 years, and I'm just being silly. But genuinely, I can't off the top of my head think about that. And the same goes for the Chicago Bulls. They are in NBA purgatory at the moment. Like, they are too good to commit to a tank, but equally they're not good enough to finish, in my opinion, in a top 6 position this year out east. And even then, there'll probably be a first-round knockout unless they play the Boston Celtics, because they just seem to have their number all the time. Yeah, the Bulls are a weird team, because in a sense, are we saying as like I'm a Bulls fan? Are we saying as Bulls fans, just wait until we get Lonzo back, and then we'll start hitting it again? Or are we saying even with Lonzo in this team, coming off of the back of almost a year out, is this going to be a side that, you know, can't regain any momentum and just destined to finish low end of the play-in, maybe even not even in a play-in, because at the moment they're 11th, and let's be honest, we're playing terribly until the last couple of games where they beat Boston and Milwaukee. This is the first time we beat Milwaukee since 2019, I think it was, and John Henson was starting at center for Milwaukee there. So yeah, it's been a while since we beat Milwaukee in the regular season. I don't know how we did it, if I'm going to be honest with you, but I'm not complaining. I will be complaining when we ultimately lose to the OKC Thunder tonight, because that'd be the most Bulls thing to do, to beat two of the best teams, arguably the two best teams in the NBA this season, and then lose to 7-11 record OKC Thunder. Is Vooch the guy? No. This Vooch deal is probably one of the worst trades in the in NBA in terms of hindsight. Like, on paper, when the trade was made in 2020, in late 2020 on the trade deadline, when Vooch had just come off of an All-Star appearance, Wendell Carter wasn't doing much, and then ultimately the pick that we gave him ended up being the 7th pick, which isn't exactly the best pick you can possibly get. We were thinking we've finessed him a little bit here. We've done bits. Vooch is our All-Star center. You know, we're gonna push on. We're gonna be in the playoffs a load more. And well, I mean, in the end, Wendell Carter is I would say that Wendell Carter is a better center at the moment than Vooch is, and that 7th pick turned out to be Franz Wagner, who has been one of the best players in his draft class. I think the Bulls probably should get rid. I think they need to commit to being young at the center position. Vooch is a good rebounder of the ball, but ultimately isn't the best defender. The fact of the matter is, though, I don't know who we're trading for. Anthony Davis is on the table, but we'd have to give up like DeMar or Zach, and I wouldn't want to do that as a Bulls fan. I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to see what happens. I mean, Vooch has been subject of fan trade speculation for God knows how long now, like probably since the start of the last season. And I mean, Kobe White has been on there too, but he drained 2 clutch threes against the Bucks. So we just have a lot of inconsistent players in important positions. Kobe White being our only main shooter off the bench, and Vucevic being our starting big man. I think the Bulls kind of have to just hope that the teams above them that on paper aren't as good as the Bulls side just get worse, and then the Bulls can kind of just take advantage of that, because Indiana, Washington, and New York probably shouldn't be the 5th, 6th, and 7th seed yet, in my opinion. Indiana are a really weird one. How are Indiana 5th? They've had a bit of an easy run in to start the season, to be fair. But this is a side that went like 6-20 in the second half of last season after trading for Tyrese Halliburton. But this season, Halliburton has made that jump, and Benedict Mathurin is probably going to be Rookie of the Year. Paolo is a very good player, but I think Benedict Mathurin, for the kind of like shock value of everyone was just expecting Paolo to become the best player, and Mathurin's kind of just come in and kind of stolen that for him. So yeah, I think Mathurin's probably going to be the Rookie of the Year. But and them two are one of the best backcourts in the league so far this season, which is mental to say. I don't think anyone was expecting that. Miles Turner is playing like some next level center. This is probably his best season of his career. And is it a coincidence that this is the season where he's been in the limelight for trades most? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe he's trying to sell himself. But equally, it's just making Indiana a miles better team. So I don't know. I don't know what the deal was with the Sacramento trade. I don't know what picks they're gonna get for this upcoming draft. But maybe Indiana can actually build on this, and you know, if they keep Buddy Hield, who's one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, if they keep Miles Turner, who's one of the best defenders, like 90+ percentile defender, and can space the floor, they have a pretty underrated side out there. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It depends what Indiana are wanting. I think they were expecting to tank. I was expecting them to tank, but Indiana fans, what are you thinking? Tyrese Halliburton is that guy though. Is the most positive thing that can come from it. He's kind of like Shea in the OKC Thunder, but Indiana are just a better team, really. As for Washington, though, I feel like out of all of the three teams that I said, they're probably going to be the team that are going to see this as an opportunity to push on and maybe try and make a playoff spot proper, you know, without having to go through the play-in. Porzingis has actually been a really good center this year, I think. And obviously Bradley Beal, whilst not the guy that he was 2 years ago, that equally that's not, you know, that's obviously a really hard player to beat. He's actually still pulling through and being sick. So I don't know. I think Washington have to really look at this and think this is where we try and make a playoff run, which I think that's what Washington's kind of aims were at the start of the season. I don't think that they would have put themselves in the sweepstakes for Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson in the draft. I think they were expecting this season to be the season where they kind of like feast on a few of the sides that aren't going to be doing well, and then use that to try and push on to a playoff spot. So I think maybe that could be the case with the Washington Wizards. As for the Knicks, and the Knicks are still playing on a 500 clip, 9 for 9, despite RJ Barrett literally being one of the worst players in the NBA this season in terms of shooting. Like, his efficiency's been god awful this year. I think he's shooting like less than 40% from the field or something like that, which is not something that you'd expect from a guy that you've just given a rookie max extension to. So yeah, that's a bit of an L. But Jalen Brunson's coming in, he's been solid. Julius Randle's coming in, like acting a bit solid this year. He's not being, like, obviously he isn't the guy that won most improved player, but equally he isn't as bad as what he was last year. These are two essentially playing teams this year. But if they can push forward and get a place in the playoffs, then who knows? Who knows? In terms of the West, though, and the West is really weird. Utah are still the 4th seed. What's that all about? What's going on? They've won 12 games this season. I'm gonna put it out there. If they lost every single one if they won, I don't know, like 4 games for the remainder of the season, they would still probably have a better record than this Houston team. Houston are on track to win about 10, 12 games this season. Like, this Utah team, despite only winning twice out of the last 5 games, are still a very solid seed in the West, although the West is a little bit weaker. Obviously, Phoenix top in the West at the moment, having lost 6 games. They're still 0.5 behind in terms of games back. Utah, you need to make a decision. Are you tanking, or are you winning the league this year? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, Lauri Markkanen, this guy is going to be an all-star this year, and as a former Bull, it does suck to see, but equally, I kind of like it. I mean, does this show that Lauri Markkanen isn't a good second option or a third option? Lauri Markkanen is the franchise player. I bet you weren't expecting that to be heard 5 years ago, especially you Chicago Bulls fans. But yeah, Utah, massive start to the season for them still. They're on a bit of a downward spiral now, but if they can get rid of this bad form and kick on, they may still be able to finish in the top 6 of the out west, especially with sides below them who are on paper stronger, struggling. Jordan Clarkson's coming in and playing like a guy that should have been starting for the last 2-3 years. You know, this guy is a bucket. I think a lot of people are forgetting that. The Sacramento Kings, though, are a place below them with a 10-7 record. The Beam team is what they're calling them because they went on like a massive winning streak after they lit the beam. I don't know, but I'm respecting this. De'Aaron Fox has been in the pits for his whole NBA career, and he deserves this, in my opinion. I think it's interesting seeing both Indiana and Sacramento in the playoffs, like both in the 5th seed so far. Like people were saying last season that the Sabonis for Halliburton trade was one of the worst trades in the NBA because it didn't benefit either side. They both didn't make the playoffs. They both didn't make the play-in still. It started well from this season. Big up the Kings. Big up the Kings. Do I want them in the playoffs? Of course I do. Of course I do. And then finally, the massive team I want to talk about is probably the Oklahoma City Thunder. 7-11 on the season, 12th in the Western Conference. A very interesting one because this team has all it takes. Well, I say team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has all it takes to drag this team to 30 wins this season. No doubt about it. Like, this guy is putting up MVP numbers. If this guy played for I think he's like 5th at the moment in MVP voting. If he played for a top tier team in either conference, this man would be leading, I think. Maybe second to Luka. But the spacing on Oklahoma City is terrible, and yet he's still putting up about 33 points. He's knocking down game winners, he's clutch, he's everything. And this Oklahoma City team's pretty average, in my opinion. Giddey has the potential to be great, but at the moment he's average. And then obviously they've got Chet coming in next season. He'll be a bit rusty potentially, but I think that the Oklahoma City Thunder should push for a playing spot this year. I think that should happen. They're too good, in my opinion, to tank. And with Chet coming in, that's going to be kind of like that's a second overall pick. Like, that's like you have the second overall pick next year. Man, the Rookie of the Year race is going to be mad next year. Wembanyama, Chet, and Scoot Henderson. Man, that's going to be interesting. But I digress. With Chet coming in next year, that's kind of like your second overall pick to push forward. And the Thunder are probably going to have about 7 more first-round picks this year. So I don't think they need to be trying to get that number 1 pick. If they can like hang in and around that like 10, 11, 12 position throughout the rest of the season, if they finish as high as 10th, they're in the play-in. They get some playoff basketball. I don't think the play-in should count as playoff basketball, but they get some playoff basketball, which is a good thing. But if they finish 12th, they still have about a 5% chance of landing Wembanyama. So I think it's a win-win for the Thunder. I think Sam Presti's got his Thunder team in probably the best possible position. You know, Shai is that guy. They're bringing in young players to complement him, and they have potential to either, you know, do well this year. But if they don't do well, it's not the end of the world. So I think it's, you know, it's not like the Houston side where if they don't get the number 1 pick, they'd have Jalen Green and Alfred Sengun, and that's it. Like, if the Thunder don't get Wembanyama, they're still going to be good next year, and they're going to challenge for a playing spot again. So I think the Thunder are in the best position in terms of literally everybody in the NBA, in the way of, you know, they can choose, because one more season of tanking, I'm sure won't mind. You know, Shai wants to be here for the long run. He's going to be their centerpiece. They don't need to trade him. He doesn't want out. So I think if they tank for one more year, that's not awful. But if they don't, then Shai might have some playoff basketball, which is much deserved because he's probably going to be an all-star this year. But anyway, quarterly review down. I think that will wrap up today's video. Let me know if you guys want to see more just like ramblings on the NBA. It's kind of like a podcast, but just on my own, and I want to do it daily, like wrapping up every single night's games. Let me know if you guys want to see that, and yeah, like and subscribe to the YouTube. Make sure you're following all the socials in the description, and yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.